Hello everybody. The topic of this section is risk transfer and economic efficiency. In this section, we will discuss the efficient bearing of existing risks, risk and resource allocation, and the institutions for risk management. Institutional arrangements for the transfer of risk contribute to economic efficiency in two fundamental ways. They reallocate existing risks to those most willing to bear them, and they cause a reallocation of resources to production and consumption in accordance with the new distribution of risk-bearing. First, let's see how the facility to reallocate risks among people can make everyone better off, or the efficient bearing of existing risks. Consider the hypothetical case of two investors in very different economic circumstances. The first is a retired widow who has an accumulated nest egg of $100,000, which is her sole source of income. The second is a college student who has $100,000 and anticipates a good stream of earnings in the future after graduating from college. Typically, the widow is assumed to be a more conservative investor and the student more aggressive. That is, we would expect the widow to be concerned primarily with the safety of her stream of investment income, whereas we might expect the student to be willing to bear more risk in exchange for a higher expected return. Further, suppose that the widow currently holds all of her wealth in the form of a portfolio of stocks left to her by her recently deceased husband. And suppose the college student has all of her wealth in a bank certificate of deposit that her parents started for her years before. Both would be better off if they could somehow swap their assets so that the widow ends up holding the certificate of deposit and the student the stock portfolio. Typically, several financial intermediaries would be involved in the process. For example, the widow might have her stocks in an account at a brokerage firm. She gives the broker an order to sell them and to invest the proceeds of the sale in a bank certificate of deposit. The student, on the other hand, cashes in her certificate of deposit at the bank and buys the stocks through her broker. The student and the widow each had $100,000 of assets before, and immediately afterwards, they each have $100,000 less the broker fees and bank charges. The sole purpose and the result of the transactions is to allow each party to hold the portfolio of assets, offering them the combination of risk and expected return most attractive for their circumstances. Next, let's see risk and resource allocation. If there is no ability to reallocate risks and further facilitate the undertaking of valuable projects, the projects might not be undertaken because they are too risky. The ability to pool and share risks can lead to an increase in inventive activity and the development of new products. In addition to risk pooling and sharing, specialization in the bearing of risks can also facilitate undertaking risky investments. Potential investors may be willing to accept some of the exposures associated with the business enterprise, but not others. Suppose that a scientist discovers a new drug designed to treat the common cold. She requires $1 million to develop, test, and produce it. At this stage, the drug has a small probability of commercial success. Even if the scientist has $1 million in her bank account, she might not be willing to risk it all on the drug. She might instead set up a firm to develop the drug and bring in other investors to share both the risks and the potential rewards of her discovery. In another example, suppose a real estate developer is planning to construct a new shopping mall in a downtown location. A consortium of banks and other lending institutions agrees to finance the project, but only on the condition that it is insured against fire. That is, the lenders accept the risk that the mall might not be a commercial success, but they do not accept the exposure of their investment to the risk of a fire. The existence of specialized insurance companies that accept the risk of fire makes possible the financing of the new shopping mall. That's all about economic efficiency in risk transfer. Next, let's see the institutions for risk management. Over the centuries, various economic organizations and contractual agreements have evolved to facilitate a more efficient allocation of risk-bearing, both by expanding the scope of diversification and by permitting greater specialization in the management of risk. Insurance companies and future markets are examples of institutions whose primary economic function is to further these ends. The theoretical ideal of complete markets for allocating risks can never be fully achieved because in the real world, there are a number of limiting factors that can never be overcome entirely. Two key categories of factors limiting the efficient allocation of risks are transaction costs and incentive problems. Transaction costs include the cost of establishing and running institutions such as insurance companies or securities exchanges and the cost of writing and enforcing contracts. These institutions will not come into existence unless the pecuniary benefits from their creation exceed the costs. The primary incentive problems standing in the way of the development of institutions for efficient risk sharing are moral hazard and adverse selection. The moral hazard problem exists when having insurance against some risk causes the insured party to take greater risk or to take less care in preventing the event that gives rise to the loss. For adverse selection, those who purchase insurance against risk are more likely than the general population to be at risk. For example, if a warehouse owner buys fire insurance, the existence of the insurance reduces his incentive to spend money to prevent a fire. Failure to take the same precautions makes a warehouse fire a more likely occurrence. In an extreme case, the owner may be tempted to actually start a fire in order to collect the insurance money if the coverage exceeds the market value of the warehouse. This is an example about moral hazard problem. Because of this potential moral hazard, insurance companies may limit the amount they will insure or simply refuse to sell fire insurance under certain circumstances. The next is an example about the adverse selection. Suppose that a firm sells life annuities to people retiring at age 65. There are equal numbers of three types of people in the general population. Type A live for 10 years, Type B for 15 years, and Type C for 20 years. On average, people aged 65 live for 15 years. If the firm charges a price that reflects a 15-year life expectancy. However, it will find that the people who buy the annuities are disproportionately of types B and C. Unless the insurer can charge a price that accurately reflects each person's true life expectancy, a disproportionately large number of annuities sold will be bought by healthy people who expect to live a long time. In summary, in this section, we have discussed the examples about how the facility to reallocate risks among people can make everyone better off, and how the ability to reallocate risks facilitates the undertaking of valuable projects. We also discussed two key categories of factors limiting the efficient allocation of risks: transaction costs and incentive problems. That's all about this section. Bye.